his legacy, yeah, his legacy is built on a fictitious character. Like Dr. Huxtable is not a real person.
What I'm saying, his legacy is bigger than the Cosby Show, though.
Really?
It's bigger than the Cosby Show.
What is Bill Cosby without the like? Take the Cosby Show out. Who is Bill Cosby to white America? Because that's the real question we got to ask. Like, it don't matter about us.
Who is Bill Cosby to white America?
Right, without the Cosby Show.
I mean, no, in white America, Bill Cosby is the funniest black comedian that white people know. That's why Bill Cosby. That's why he's been selling out white audiences for 40, 50 years.
And you think that's what Felicia Rashad was talking about when she mentioned his legacy? That? No, that's not what she was talking about.
But I'm saying, Mike.
She was talking about white people calling him America's dad. He's not my damn dad. He's a dirty old man.
I mean, I get it. I get it in that regard. But I'm saying, I mean, he has. He's put together. I mean, even when you go to Fat Albert and the Junkyard Gang. I mean,
what?
I mean, he yeah.
Like, what the hell? This is why he's in trouble now, because all the stuff you talk about, nobody cares about. This is why.
I'm saying, but that's part of his legacy. We're talking about his legacy. That's part of his legacy.
Yeah,
that's part of it.
Good, and I'm glad it's being torn down now, because no one cares about Fat Albert. No one cares about like I said. If the Cosby Show came on right now, that junk would be canceled. Like the first 3 episodes. That's how whack that show. Like, look back at it. Look back at how like whack Theo was. These people are living in Brooklyn. Like later on in life, we learned about Biggie and Jay-Z and the Marcy Projects and stuff like that. We learned about that. Theo and Cockroach were none of that. You understand what I'm saying?
Because they didn't live in the hood. Because they can't. They were part of a fluent family.
Like even even their hood friends. You remember that time Theo like got caught with that joint in his book?
Yeah.
And then the dude who joined it came up to the house like he was supposed to be like the hood dude. Yeah, that dude was soft as wet toilet paper. Cause there was nothing good about that dude.
But that was a time and a place. If the Cosby Show was now, it would be completely different. It wouldn't even be written like that. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't be written like that.
It's so ridiculous.
You know, but it was great in the moment. It was great in the moment.
Like they showing black families putting on skits for grandma and grandpa. Doesn't happen.
Oh my God, Mike, you're the Grinch right now, man.
I'm what?
You're the Grinch right now, man. Why are you? Look, man.
Yeah, man. I have no tolerance, man, for people who take advantage of women that way. I have no tolerance at all, dude.
Well,
I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Jesus. If I find out like Jesus was raping bras, I'll feel the same way. Like I have no tolerance at all, my man, for a dude usurping, like taking advantage of his position of power to do that to somebody's daughter or somebody's ex-wife or somebody's aunt. No way.
Well, they're supposed to do that to some folks' kids too. I mean, you know.
Speaking of, next hour we'll get on this Kurt Schilling thing because something like that happened to him today as well. You listen to the Sports Kings podcast on Spreaker.com. Sports Kings Live is our Twitter and Instagram. You want to email us, sportskingsatl@gmail.com is where you do that at. So yeah, we started off this hour talking about famous Jameis, as he likes to call himself. The fact that he took a trip down to Tampa today to meet with Lovey and the Glazer family. They want to make sure they're making the right choice. I think they are, as far as the two quarterbacks are concerned. Not, all the quote unquote red flags to the side. Quarterback play, just standing alone. I think if you need a quarterback and you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're in the same conference as Drew Brees and Matt Ryan and Cam Newton, I think Jameis Winston is your guy. I said the same thing I'm going to say the same thing about him that I said about Cam Newton. Like the stage, whatever happens in their careers, their collective careers, the stage will not be too big. Like both of these guys dealt with a lot of distractions during their college careers, and they still performed at a very, very high level. They both won the Heisman Trophy, and they both are built for prime time. So whatever it is that happens, and by the way, that Tampa Bay team is like really just a quarterback away. They got two monsters on the outside. Yeah. They got a guy in Doug Martin who didn't really show up last year, but whatever. He showed flashes in his first year of being a good running back. And then you add a quarterback to that mix.
I had Doug Martin on my fantasy team that year, and he beat.
Yeah. Last year he got hurt a little bit. They got rid of LeGarrette Blount for him, and he really didn't answer the call at all last year for the people who did draft him as far as fantasy football goes. He didn't really answer that call. But yeah, that team is pretty much ready to rock. You know, they're pretty solid on defense. Excuse me. Solid enough to compete if they like, especially in this NFC South thing where I don't know. Hopefully next year is going to take more than what did the Panthers have? 7 wins. Yeah, 7 wins to win the division. That's embarrassing. Yeah. That's one of the most embarrassing things that could happen with the type of quarterback play in this division or in that particular division. For 7 wins, to win that division, everyone should be embarrassed. Even the guys who won the division should be embarrassed.
Well, you know, I mean, it's one of those things, man. And I think everybody in the NFC South had a lackluster season. I mean, and that's the real deal. The Falcons, the first time they saw everybody in the division, I mean, they handled their business. I mean, but then, toward the second half of the season, they started going on a decline, and the Carolina Panthers, I mean, holler what you wanted, but they were on the upswing. I mean, and the Saints kind of stayed, right there even. Tampa Bay sucked, so, I mean, I don't know what to say about the NFC South. I mean, this is the first time that we've had a team repeat as the division champion, and so I want to say that it's just very competitive, kind of like the NFC East, but I can't really say that.
Uncompetitive is what it is.
I can't really say that.
Bottom of the barrel NFC South is pretty appropriate that they would be the South because they don't get no lower than that. You mentioned the Falcons, and I thought about this yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to bring it up. A guy who I love, man, to watch play football, Darnell Dockett is probably going to be a free agent, man. That dude is a monster. But, and there is a but, he's coming off of an ACL injury, which is the main reason he's probably not going to be back in Arizona. But for a team like the Falcons, wow, man, I don't. I mean, it depends. Everything depends on the dollar figure. If he checks out medically, this is the dude who can play some football, and he can wreak havoc in the middle of that defensive line. You pair him up with your young kid Rashid Hageman, the kid that got out of Minnesota last year. You may have something working in the middle once you get your pass rushers set. The other thing that happened while I was reading in the Bleacher Report, they were anticipating like landing spots for certain free agents, and one landing spot for one Julius Thomas was the Atlanta Falcons. I talked about this yesterday, that Matt Ryan had his best years when he had a tight end, when he had a great tight end, a guy who could create natural mismatches. And the fact that I read that today, it kind of just brought it back to mind. Like, yeah, other people are thinking the way I'm thinking. You want to the thing about Matt Ryan is like for anybody who's looking for him still at this point in his career to be Mr. Spectacular, stop. At his very best, what he's gonna do for you is be consistent. When all things are equal around him, when the line isn't a travesty and his wideouts aren't hurt, you can depend on him being consistent. A guy who gets you a couple 300-yard games a year. At the end of the season, he ended up with between 35 and 4,000 yards passing. And, go on, make a Pro Bowl or two, and then that's going to do it, But he's not going to shatter any passing records. He's not going to blow up the spot. But I don't think you necessarily need that because, at the end of the day, that ain't what Russell Wilson did. And he seemed to find himself in Super Bowls every year.
Well, when you talk about the Atlanta Falcons, and during this whole Matt Ryan era, there have been times where I've been really high on the Atlanta Falcons offense, and times I've just been like, what in the hell? And, this past season and really the season before, I mean, and I guess I would have to say it was because of, the lackluster production that we were getting from the run game. I mean, the Falcons just really didn't even look like themselves. I mean, you had Matt Ryan making a lot of plays. You had Julio and Roddy and Tony the year before this one that just ended, making plays. But, they just didn't look like themselves because they didn't have that play action that, allowed them to thrive when they were, winning, prior to, these past two seasons. And so that's why I asked you yesterday about what Shanahan's system was even gonna look like here in Atlanta, because there's definitely a situation that can be created where Matt Ryan could be in that comfort zone again. And I think when he having Michael Turner for as long as he did, I think that kind of created a comfort zone for him. So then Tony was the safety valve, and then he had his big time receivers, and so. I just think that, if they are able to sign Thomas and, our run game is pretty decent, I think it create that situation again.
Now, at the beginning of the show, we talked about, well, we didn't talk about it yet, but I mentioned that the Philadelphia Eagles had traded running back LaShawn McCoy for linebacker Kiko Alonso, a trade from the Philadelphia Eagles to the Buffalo Bills. Now, Mike Florio is reporting that LaShawn McCoy's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, is saying that no such trade has occurred. But what they're saying is the trade may just be agreed to, may have been just agreed to in principle, but the linchpin in it all is if LaShawn McCoy if he's just not feeling it, the Buffalo Bills may not want him. If he's a guy who's gonna show up as disgruntled, that he doesn't want to play in Buffalo. It's basically it's an agreement in principle at this point. There's nothing that's been written down as of yet. So both teams can back out at any time in the next week or so. So Drew Rosenhaus, per Mike Florio of ProFootballTalk.com, is saying that there is no such deal between the Buffalo Bills and Philadelphia Eagles for LaShawn McCoy and Kiko Alonso. You're listening to the Sports Kings podcast on Spreaker.com. Sports Kings Live is our Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you follow us and shoot us a tweet while you're listening to this. Give us your feedback. You got any questions? You got any comments on the subject matter? Feel free. You can also email your comments or questions to sportskingshtl@gmail.com. We got about 2 more minutes left in this first hour of show number 2 of the Sports Kings podcast. We've been talking about just as an overview, we've talked about sports media and my contention that a lot of the information that we get is there's a natural bias behind it. Not anything malicious, but there's a natural bias just because the people who report the stories and the people who comment on the stories 80-90% of the time don't look like the people in the story. So it's hard to relate to anything other than what you've been programmed to relate to. And that's fine and dandy, but with everything, there should always be a balance. There should always be some sort of balance to where one set of people aren't programming the rest of people. And I think that's what happens a lot of times with ESPN. I think ESPN just that whole Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith thing, and that whole Round the Horn and the Tony Kornheiser and that whole deal, it just infiltrates your mind to the point where you become an ESPN zombie. And what they tell you to think and what they tell you to feel is exactly what you feel. In the second hour, I'm going to talk about this article that was written by my guy, Richard Deitz in SI.com. He takes an in-depth look at ESPN audio, and he talks about the future of sports radio. And I thought it was very compelling. Some of the answers that he got from I can't even say this name. I think it's Trog Keller. He's the guy who oversees ESPN audio, all the programming and the staffing and all that stuff that goes on ESPN radio. And they sat down and had a one-on-one, and some of the answers that we're giving, well, Rob, is probably not likely that me and you're going to end up on ESPN radio anytime in the future. So we'll talk about that in the second hour of the Sports Kings podcast.